Have you ever wondered why you hesitate to speak up, even when your gut says you should? That hesitation wasn't born in you. It was installed. You were taught to be polite, to say yes, to smile, not because it was right, but because it was easy to control. They didn't want strength. They wanted silence. They called it respect. They praised you for being agreeable, for not arguing, for giving in. And little by little, you started to believe that being good meant being quiet. But what they really trained you to be was obedient. Obedience is not strength, it's self-erasure disguised as virtue. They told you not to be too loud, too proud, too bold, not because it made you better, but because it made them more comfortable. And so you dimmed your light, bit your tongue, shrunk your truth. But here's what they didn't expect. The moment you realize the script, you stop playing the part. In the next section, we'll break down exactly how obedience was weaponized to make you small, and how to reclaim the strength they tried to bury. Obedience was never neutral. It was always political, social, psychological. It was how control disguised itself as care, wrapped in politeness, masked as discipline, sold as maturity. From the moment you entered a classroom, a family, a workplace, you were measured not by your ability to think, but by your willingness to follow, to color inside the lines, to lower your voice when it grew too passionate, to shrink when you began to take up space. This wasn't random. It was designed. Because obedient people are predictable. They don't question authority. They internalize hierarchy. They self-censor. And eventually, they police each other, creating a culture where compliance is rewarded and authenticity is punished. This is how the system sustains itself. Not just through force, but through trained obedience. The control doesn't come from the top anymore. It comes from within. You hesitate before you speak. You second-guess your own needs. You replay conversations to check if you were too much. And it's subtle. They never say, be weak. They say, don't rock the boat. Play nice. Keep your head down. Don't get involved. Just let it go. They teach you that peace is better than truth, that being liked is better than being free, that conformity is safer than confrontation. And so you trade your voice for approval. You trade your instincts for permission. You trade your boundaries for belonging. But here's the cost. The more obedient you become, the less you recognize yourself. Your emotions don't vanish. They bury themselves. Your anger doesn't die. It transforms into anxiety. Your strength doesn't disappear. It calcifies under layers of guilt. And then one day, you wake up and realize you're exhausted, not from doing too much, but from constantly holding yourself back. That's what obedience does. It turns your power into tension, your truth into performance. Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But obedience trains you to do the opposite, to accept only the parts that fit, the parts that won't offend, the parts that don't disturb the social order. So you become a fragmented version of yourself, tolerated but never fully seen. And worst of all, you begin to mistake your cage for your comfort zone. You decorate the bars. You make yourself small enough to fit. And you forget that freedom doesn't feel like safety. It feels like risk. But cages don't protect you. They condition you. They keep you small enough to manage, quiet enough to ignore, grateful enough to never rebel. And that is the real purpose of control. Not to protect you, but to pacify you. To domesticate the parts of you that could cause disruption. The parts that could threaten the status quo. To convince you that strength is selfish. That clarity is arrogance. That confidence is aggression. Because if they can make you believe that your own power is dangerous, they'll never have to fear your rebellion. They use praise as a leash, applause as a distraction, acceptance as a reward for staying silent. And when you begin to challenge that, they call you difficult, dramatic, disrespectful. But in truth, you are becoming whole. The urge to resist isn't rebellion, it's restoration. It's what happened in every movement that ever shook the world. When people stopped asking permission and started following their own inner compass. Whether it was women speaking out against silence, workers standing up against exploitation, or people of color rising up against centuries of domination. The moment obedience was rejected, everything shifted. And yet even today, those first instincts of power are questioned. You stand taller and someone tells you to be humble. You raise your voice and someone calls it aggression. You choose boundaries and they call it betrayal. But that's how the script works. They rewrite your strength as sin. So the next time you feel the urge to speak up, to resist, to say no, and you hesitate, don't ask yourself, what will they think? Ask instead, who trained me to think this way? Because strength doesn't ask for permission. It listens to the truth beneath the fear. It moves anyway. It speaks without rehearsing safety. And once you begin to feel that, the real you starts returning, piece by piece, breath by breath, until you look in the mirror and finally see someone who isn't performing, but living. In the next section, we'll explore how to retrain your instincts, to replace obedience with awareness, and silence with sovereign action. You don't need to be told who you are. You were never meant to be compliant, you were meant to be complete. The first step toward freedom is awareness. It's the quiet moment when you realize that the story you've been telling yourself, the one about who you are, what you deserve, how you must behave, was written by someone else. It was a script crafted by voices outside of you. Society, family, authority figures, cultural expectations. And it was designed not to empower, but to contain. You weren't born to shrink. You weren't born to dim your light or silence your voice. Yet, through years of subtle conditioning, you learned to do all of these things. The instincts to assert yourself, to protect your boundaries, and to honor your feelings were trained to whisper rather than roar. Rewiring this script means tuning into those whispers. It means listening to the parts of yourself that were told to be quiet, those long-buried instincts that still pulse beneath the surface, waiting for your permission to be heard. Begin by asking the hard questions. When did I start doubting my own power? When did I begin apologizing for needing space? Who taught me that asking for what I want is selfish? These aren't flaws or weaknesses. They're fractures caused by years of obedience and suppression. The process is gradual and delicate. It's not about an explosive break, but a slow, deliberate dismantling of old beliefs. You must first see the patterns, the way you hold back your truth, the moments you say sorry for simply existing, the times you soften your message to keep peace. Awareness of these habits is the lever that shifts the balance of power back to you. From there, you start to choose differently. You choose to speak up, even if your voice trembles. You choose to rest, even if guilt creeps in. You choose to walk away, even without others' approval. Most importantly, you choose to live guided by your internal compass, not the scripts handed down by those who wanted you small. Carl Jung famously said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." Your fate is not predetermined. It's a story you can rewrite. And you are the author of this new script. You begin rewriting the narrative of how you show up in the world. Boundaries become clear and unapologetic. You stop over-explaining why you need space or why you say no. You make decisions grounded in alignment with your true self, not fear of judgment or rejection. As this rewiring unfolds, a deep trust emerges. Trust in yourself, your feelings, and your choices. This trust is the foundation of your quiet revolution, one not shouted from rooftops, but felt deeply in every fiber of your being. You stop waiting for validation, applause, or permission. Ownership of your life is not about dominance over others, but responsibility toward yourself. It means standing firmly in your truth, even when it shakes the comfort of those around you. This transformation draws people toward you who respect your light and encourage your growth rather than fear it. You become a magnet for those who are also shedding old narratives and stepping into their own sovereignty. This process is subtle and ongoing. It unfolds in daily choices, refusing to say yes out of fear, choosing no out of self-love, turning silence into a powerful strategy rather than a submissive act. You stop performing roles to please others and start aligning with your authentic self. Every conscious step, every breath, honoring your truth rebuilds the nervous system of someone who truly belongs to themselves. You don't just occupy space, you anchor it. You carry a presence that commands respect, not through volume, but through essence. To visualize this transformation, imagine a tree that was once bent by winds of external expectation and judgment. It adapted by curving and twisting, its growth stunted. Rewiring your script is the process of straightening, letting roots grow deep, branches reach wide, and leaves shine unabashedly toward the sun. It's reclaiming the full stature of your being. This growth isn't always comfortable. It may mean losing connections with those attached to the old version of you. But in shedding those ties, you make room for relationships built on authenticity and mutual respect. In moments of doubt, remember that this isn't rebellion against the world. It's restoration of your true self. As you move forward, you no longer chase approval or seek permission to be powerful. You embody it. In the next section, we'll explore what happens when you begin to embody this ownership fully, how the world responds, shifts, and rearranges itself in response to your presence. We'll uncover how sovereignty transforms from an internal state to an external force that cannot be ignored. For years, you were trained to ask before acting, to seek permission before speaking, to soften your needs to avoid conflict, to preemptively apologize to maintain peace. This conditioning was subtle but pervasive. It taught you that your voice was optional, your feelings negotiable, and your power conditional. You learned to shrink yourself, not because you were weak, but because obedience was rewarded and resistance was punished. But what happens when you stop asking? When you no longer look to others for validation or approval? When you stop seeking permission to be yourself? Everything changes. You no longer negotiate your worth. You no longer explain your choices. You simply exist, fully, unapologetically sovereign. In that simple existence, you command a kind of attention that words can't buy. Those who once thrived on your compliance are disarmed by your quiet refusal. The scripts they wrote about you, the ones that depended on your need for their permission, crumble. They are forced to confront a new reality. You no longer belong to the game. Withdrawal is often misunderstood. It's mistaken for retreat, avoidance, or weakness. But in truth, withdrawal is the ultimate assertion of control. It is a declaration that your energy belongs to you alone, not to those who demand it. Think of it like a tidal ebb. When the waters recede, the shore reveals its true shape, rugged, unyielding, undeniable. Your silence is the receding tide, uncovering your essence beneath years of conditioned responses. Carl Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you look into your own heart." Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakes. Awakening means ceasing to seek your reflection in others' eyes. It means standing in your own light, whether or not anyone else acknowledges it. When you stop asking, you create a vacuum. And in that vacuum, those who sought to control your reactions are left grasping for air. Their strategies falter, their words lose power, their emotional manipulation fails, and you find peace. You begin to build boundaries that are firm, clear, and unassailable. You learn to hold your space without apology, to protect your energy without guilt, to walk away from situations that no longer serve your sovereignty without the need to justify or explain. This silence is not absence, it is presence. It is a potent form of communication that says, "I am enough. I do not need your approval. I will not be controlled." Of course, this path is not without cost. You will lose some people. those who fed on your availability, your explanations, and your emotional labor. But this loss is not deprivation, it is liberation. Because every space you clear is filled with room for authenticity and mutual respect. When you stop asking, the world begins to listen. Not because you shout louder, but because you embody something undeniable. Your energy shifts, your demeanor changes. You move with a calm certainty that unsettles the needy and empowers the worthy. You no longer respond to every provocation. You no longer seek to prove your worth. You no longer bend yourself into shapes others expect. Instead, you stand, anchored, resilient, sovereign. This sovereign silence invites respect. It commands space. It rewires relationships, and those who misunderstand it as coldness or distance reveal their own discomfort with boundaries. In time, you learn that true connection is not about constant availability or emotional exposure. It is about integrity. It is about presence. It is about mutual respect. You find that the people who truly matter, the ones who honor your boundaries, are drawn in by this strength, not pushed away. They don't demand explanations or apologies. They accept you fully in your silence and your voice. The power of stopping the endless asking is the power to reclaim yourself, to stop being a participant in the dramas designed to keep you small, to start writing your own narrative, one where your voice is sovereign, your peace inviolable. This is the essence of true strength. In the next section, we will explore how to embody this sovereignty fully, how to cultivate silent dominance, an unshakable presence that commands respect without demanding it. We'll reveal why those who once ignored your voice will fear your quiet rise. You've stopped explaining. You've withdrawn your emotional access. You've stepped into presence, into stillness. But what happens next? What happens after the silence when the old you would have begged to be heard and the new you lets the silence echo? This is where dominance begins. Not with control over others, but with command over yourself. A presence so rooted it makes noise irrelevant. A power that doesn't ask to be recognized. It simply cannot be ignored. True dominance is not performance. It is alignment. It is the quiet certainty of someone who no longer chases validation because they're too focused on building something greater than attention. Sovereignty. Machiavelli warned that power fades when you make yourself too familiar. People respect what they can't easily touch, what they can't fully understand, what remains just out of reach, even when it's in the room. So how do you become untouchable? You stop giving people emotional credit they haven't earned. You stop auditioning for love, recognition, or inclusion. You stop mistaking volume for value. You begin to build internally. Discipline, focus, mystery. You let your habits do the talking. Your results become your voice. Your boundaries become your biography. There's a kind of energy that walks into the room and changes the pace. Not because it's loud, but because it's undeniable. You've met people like this. The ones who seem untouchable not because they fight, but because they never flinch. That's not a gift. That's training. That's what happens when silence is no longer a retreat, but a tool, a strategy, a signal. I don't need you to understand me. I need you to feel the gap between what you expected and what I delivered. Carl Jung once wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." This is what silent dominance does. It makes your unconscious reactions conscious choices. You no longer spiral in emotion. You channel it. You no longer overshare. You observe. You no longer chase. You attract by existing in stillness. And what you attract is different, because your vibration has changed. People no longer come to test you. They approach with caution. They no longer mock your silence. They wonder what it protects. They no longer feel above you. They can't tell what game you're playing. This is not arrogance. This is clarity. You start to move differently. Fewer explanations, more execution, fewer emotional leaks, more strategic moves, fewer responses, more boundaries with no return address. And when someone tries to bait you with guilt, confusion, chaos, they meet a wall of silence. Not apathy, strength. This is the wall they can't climb because there are no handholds. You gave them nothing to grip. Silent dominance is about walking into a room and needing no defense because your presence speaks before you do. It's about letting others run their mouths while you run your life. It's about creating so much internal peace that even provocation feels like background noise. You stop participating in battles that require your emotional collapse. You stop engaging with people who only understand love when it hurts. You begin to love yourself without needing applause. You begin to create without needing permission. You begin to walk away without explaining the door behind you. And those who once mistook your silence for weakness, they start to look for signs. They replay your absence. They interpret your calm like a puzzle, but they will never solve you because you no longer explain the solution. You've become untouchable, not because you're above them, but because you are beyond their reach. Because when silence becomes your language, dominance becomes your native tongue. And the final act of power? To no longer need to prove anything at all. You don't have to say a word. They'll feel it, and they'll never forget it. In a world addicted to noise, your silence becomes a thunderclap, a shockwave they didn't see coming. It's the quiet rebellion of someone who no longer plays by rules designed to keep them small. When they speak about you, they'll whisper, not because they fear you, but because they remember what it felt like when you stopped performing. You become the question they can't answer, the absence they can't fill, the standard they can't meet. That is silent dominance. It's not a show of power, it's proof of evolution. It's what happens when your presence becomes undeniable and your absence unforgettable. Let them talk, let them guess, let them fill the silence with their theories. You just keep building in quiet, moving in purpose, holding your peace like armor, because you've learned the final truth. Those who never respected your voice will tremble when they feel your silence. And that's when you'll know you are no longer part of the noise. You are the echo that stays behind. If you've felt this message stirring something deep inside, something tired of noise, tired of being small, then subscribe. Not because you need to be told, but because you're ready to move in silence.
To build your power quietly
And to become the unshakable force they can't ignore.